Welcome back, Maverick Gamers. It's Dwayne here, and today I wanted to talk about what I like to call the minimalistic approach to playing Dungeons & Dragons online. Let's take a step back and give you some context as to how I grew up playing Dungeons & Dragons. Back in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of visual material that you could bring to the table in order to help with your imaginative play of D&D. Illustrations and books, monster manuals, and the modules were all you could really rely on to help players get a sense of what they were trying to describe. Hand-drawn maps were the norm, and maybe if you were lucky, you had some miniatures to represent the player characters, but rarely. The internet has given us a wonderful tool to enjoy D&D, but also opened a glorified Pandora's box when it comes to bringing the D&D experience to a new generation of players. So my Dungeons & Dragons games consist of myself and usually between 4 to 5 young students, aged 13 to 17. Each one of my students are different in how they interpret what I bring to the table as far as visuals, imagination, and in general, how I present the game. It's not all that different than a teacher with a classroom and everyone having a different way of learning. This brings me to the dilemma of an online virtual table and how best to bring the table alive, or rather the imaginations of the players. The big push in the industry right now seems to be on delivering completely immersive 3D and 2D virtual tables that throw amazing graphics and visuals at the players. In fact, the official D&D VTT, Project Sigil, aims to be more like a AAA video game experience versus a simple theater of the mind experience. Powered by Unreal Engine, it promises to just bombard players with realistic graphics and immersive animations to bring the virtual table alive. But what about that old saying, less is more? Does all this graphical horsepower actually enhance the player's imagination, or does it more numb it instead? Let's talk about the minimalistic approach. It's a known fact that the more visual information that a person has, the less the brain works to fill in the blanks. So take for instance a horror movie. Some of the best monster movies or even slasher films are the ones that don't reveal the killer or monster until the very end of the movie. So perfect examples in cinema are like Jaws, Aliens, Predator, Friday the 13th. The viewer's not given a full picture of what the threat is, so their imaginations fill in the blank. It's the unknown that ignites our imagination reflex and creates a more visceral experience. I know myself that when directors started showing off how cool CGI was back in the 90s by showing us the monster in their full glory, I kind of started to tune out. Still cool, but not really feeling of suspense compared to the feeling of not knowing what was hiding in the shadows. The point being is that my imagination wasn't firing on all cylinders. Virtual tables follow the same principle. So how do we bring D&D online in the best way possible, and should we even use virtual tables? Well, the answer is a little tricky. If you insist on using a VTT for your online games, I highly recommend you reduce your visual representation to the bare minimum. Think about the basic needs to help kickstart your player's imagination and stop there. If your players are battling an ogre in a grassy field, consider uploading a simple green map or a simple grass mat, and that's it. Don't add more visuals or details in the map itself. Instead, let your descriptions fill in the blanks and give the player's imagination some breathing room. They'll reach out and ask you for more details if they need it, and if they can't see, they'll use their imagination to fill in the blanks. That's how we did it in the 80s. We pulled out a piece of paper and drew a rough sketch of the rooms or battlefields. Now let me give you an example. Here, we have a beautifully hand-drawn map illustrating a dungeon environment in full color with beautifully rendered elements that would be fitting for a dungeon. The walls have detail and the room is very depicted. Players can pretty much see exactly what this room contains just by looking at the map. Now, contrast that with this map. A basic black and white map with minimal artistic flair. Definitely shows the players specific elements that stand in the room, but it lacks any nuance that the players can glean from it. Not only will this boost the imagination response, but it will also lead to a more engaged player. A lack of information will most likely draw out the curiosity in younger players, leading to more engagement. On the other side of the table, I used to fall into the trap when I played role-playing games and when I used the Dungeon Master that came with a wonderful battle map and stand-up tokens to represent characters. Over time, I stopped describing the scenes for the players in detail, and instead I just fell back on the fact that they could see the maps in front of them. I didn't describe the environment because we all could see it on the table right in front of us. I just focused on the gameplay and the rules. It became a glorified board game, essentially. Having a full 3D virtual table can also cause a reverse effect on a DM as well, And the glowy graphics and maps in front of them makes them a lazy dungeon master, just like it did with me with these physical maps I had. In all, there's many different ways to bring a virtual table alive for your online players, and I don't want to say that there's one way that works for everyone. I would, however, recommend that you look at your players and see if maybe a less is more approach. Maybe it creates a better imagination reflex in your players. I hope you're all having fun playing Dungeons & Dragons. We'll talk to you soon. Before you go, I need your help. I'm trying to grow the exposure of what we do here at Maverick Games. My goal is to actually bring information to parents and students for fun, academics, and even support of neurodivergency. Please subscribe and make sure you click on those notifications. I don't do paid ads or sponsorships. I hope that you can find content here that's enjoyable for yourself and maybe others. Thank you very much, and thanks for tuning in.